So thank you all so much for attending my talk. My name is Kari Jordan. I'm the executive director for the Carpentries. I want you to join me in the collaborative document that you see linked up here. There are going to be 3 guiding questions that we talk through over the 20 minutes after I quickly run through my slides. And while you're navigating to the short URL, I want to talk to you about a collaboration that the Carpentries had an opportunity to do beginning in late 2024 with the Generalist Repository Ecosystem Initiative, or GREI. And this was an opportunity for us to explore data repositories like Dataverse, Dryad, Figshare, Zenodo, and how we can more intentionally weave those repositories into the Carpentries pedagogy and our workshops. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that collaboration and then get into some discussion questions, hopefully in about 10 minutes when I finish talking. So Carpentries workshops, if you're not familiar, our workshops are over 2 days or 4 half days. We teach open source programming languages, reproducibility skills, things like that. And all of our workshops are led by volunteers. These workshops are great for teaching what to do with your data, but when it comes to how to access data and how to encourage researchers to use data out of repositories, that's where the Carpentries kind of falls short. And so our goal was to work with the generalist repositories to figure out how can we leverage data sets that may not have a disciplinary home, and rather than downloading those data sets onto your computer and then uploading them into R or Python or things like that, how can we pull the data sets directly from a repository and work with them in an actual workshop? So this was an opportunity for us to collaborate with the generalist repositories and see if we can kind of streamline that process. So what we did, this was a workshop that we presented at Georgia Tech University in Georgia in the United States. We took a lesson data set, one that we use often. We assigned it a DOI, and we made it citable and persistent. I know some of you will get excited about persistent identifiers. We talked a lot about that yesterday. Making it more persistent and accessible. By modifying our lesson in the Carpentries and allowing us to retrieve the data set directly from Zenodo rather than downloading it, it made it programmatically more accessible. And then it removed our need to continue to download those files locally. This is a huge step in the Carpentries move away from leveraging data sets that are not accessible, and repositories that some of our community members had actually never heard of before. So what we're trying to do is to sort of bridge the data community with the teaching community. A lot of people that come to our lessons, they have their own data sets, but we actually have a large group of individuals who depend on the Carpentries to find interesting data sets. And that's not really our niche. Our niche is more, if you have data, come to us and we'll show you how to use it. But leveraging the repositories that already exist give us an opportunity to merge those two communities. So this is a little bit of a highlight from the workshop that we presented. We currently have a lesson, a Python lesson that leverages a data set that we download. We updated that lesson to include leveraging that API and pulling the data set directly from Zenodo. We ran an in-person workshop in Georgia, and we invited a community into the broader Carpentries ecosystem and help them to see that you can not only discover more data, but you can share it back to the repository once you've played around with it. We got great results from this workshop. It was amazing to see that Many people had never even heard of Zenodo, Figshare, and some of the other generalist repositories. To be honest, when I first started with the Carpentries, I had never heard of the term generalist repository. I'm just going to be a little honest. And so opening their eyes to what's accessible to them made a little bit more exciting, made the opportunity a little bit more exciting for them. Integrating the repositories into the Carpentries lessons gave us an opportunity to talk to them about persistent identifiers without using all of the jargon. How many of you love jargon? I know y'all. And so it helped us to talk about it with, without so much jargon. It introduced the idea of publishing data alongside code. So that's another thing that we're really trying to push for. It's not only the code that you're producing and publishing and giving that DOI, but you can publish your data alongside with the code into some of these repositories. And it also helped us to reinforce open science values of transparency, reuse, and collaboration. Newsflash, those are still core competencies. Don't let the AI lovers steer you wrong. We still need core competencies. Okay, I'm off my soapbox. So our work with the GREI repositories, it made one thing super clear for us. Teaching people how to work with data also means helping them think about where data lives, how it's accessed, and how it can be reused by others. As we look into the future, we're hoping to incorporate more of the generalist repositories into our workshops. We may even create a lesson around data sharing and using the fundamental pedagogy that the Carpentries teaches around creating, an active learning environment and things like that, but for generalist repositories, and hopefully bringing maintainers into that conversation as well. It's not only about creating these lessons that teach how to analyze your data, but where to get your data from and how to contribute that data back to these repositories so that everyone has access to them. If you are interested in exploring here's my call to action. If you're interested in exploring not only this particular workshop, all of the workshop material is, of course, open access. You have, the ability to check it out, self-pace through it. You can even teach the workshop yourself. But we're also always looking for other data sets that we can use in our lessons. A lot of our data sets we pull down from Figshare. We seek to expand the kinds of lessons that we teach. We do a lot with ecology data sets and genomics and things like that. But if there's an interesting data set that you have that you think, hey, this might be interesting for maybe a library carpentry workshop or a Python workshop, we would love to talk to you about how to get your data sets into our workshops. Now, that was the project. Here's the discussion. I have to thank my collaborators. Sorry, y'all. Thank you to my collaborators from the Generalist Repository Ecosystem Initiative, John Shadaki, Aaron Becker from the Carpentries, Steve Diggs, and Emily Katz. And like I said, if you want to get in touch with us, if you have data sets that you want to explore within a Carpentries workshop, please send us an email at team@carpentries.org. We're on Blue Sky, Mastodon, and LinkedIn as well. Now, this is the fun part of this presentation. So at the very top, if you weren't able to access it, there's a short URL that leads to a co-working document. It will have the slides when I publish them on Zenodo. I haven't done that yet. It has the abstract. It also has 2 blog posts that we publish so you can learn more about the project that I just spoke about. But there are 3 really, really interesting questions, and I'm going to actually share the questions with you on the screen. Here we go. I'm a Zoomer, so this is really stressing me out using Teams. Oh, okay, I did it. Let me make it bigger. Okay, so we have 3 questions that I want us to explore. The first one is, what would it look like if open data repositories weren't just add-ons at the end of a workflow, but upfront teaching concepts? So I want you to take 2 minutes. You can either type in your thoughts directly in this document, or if you want to verbalize your thoughts, go ahead. I think, Sylvia, you have the mic. Okay. Yes, I'm so sorry. Yeah, that's fine. There we go. Can you see it? shorturl.at /P, lowercase e, capital P, capital K, lowercase e. Great. Yes. So I'm going to read all 3 questions, and then I'll come back to give you time to kind of think through them, and then also if you want to type some notes into the document, because it's always a data collection opportunity. So the first question is, what would it look like if open data repositories weren't just add-ons at the end of a workflow, but upfront teaching concepts in our lessons? This question is important to the Carpentries because our focus has been on fundamental data skills. It wasn't until we started working with the Generalist repository that we thought, hey, maybe we should teach people where to find data if they have great ideas, but they don't have access to data sets. So we're asking your thoughts. What would it look like if open data repositories weren't just add-ons at the end of a workflow, but upfront teaching concepts? The second question is, and again, I'm just going to go through all 3 and then we'll go back and have a discussion about each for 10 minutes, I think, until they kick me out. How can we position generalist repositories as active components in retrieving and processing data sets? Now, this question assumes that you're familiar with either the repositories that I just spoke of, or there may even be others that I'm not even aware of. How can we position these repositories as active components in retrieving and processing data sets? And then the last question is, how can we give researchers the tools, not just to write clean code, but to publish their work in ways that make it reusable and citable by others? This question is important to me because I think conferences like this are phenomenal, but sometimes we may assume that we're sort of preaching to the choir, so to speak, meaning everyone at the conference already knows everything about everything. There may be people in this room who've never heard of generalist repositories, who didn't know that they could retrieve data from all kinds of websites, of open access websites, who don't understand the fundamentals around reproducibility and fair data and things like that, right? So how can we give researchers the tools, not just to write clean code, but to publish their work in ways that make it reusable and citable by others? So I'm going to pause for 1 minute while you type and share your thoughts, and then I'll start at the top. Oh, we're going to start now because I have 5 minutes left. Okay. So the first question was, what would it look like if open data repositories weren't just add-ons at the end of a workflow, but upfront teaching concepts in our lessons? There were a lot of amazing things written. I want to highlight one. And if the person who wrote participants would build data browsing skills, I would love if you could expand a little bit on that. Who's the brave soul that wrote participants would build data browsing skills? What do you mean by data browsing skills?
I think we've all probably dealt with like trying to find a data set and understand it and what it is on these repositories is actually hard. So like just trying to, if you're using one of those open repositories, as I was thinking about, like as part of a process, like you'd have to learn how to quickly understand the gist of a data set and like find the metadata that tells you what the columns are, and then that would make you better at browsing for data sets in your work to build on top of. That's what I was thinking.
I like that because it's again, a lot of assumption. The assumption is if you know how to use the internet, you probably could go to any of these repositories and search for what you need, but that's an assumption. Yeah. Has anyone ever had trouble finding what you need in a repository? Yes.
I'm a librarian, so I think normalizing that it is a skill to browse for data is so important for your students, because so many times they're embarrassed to ask because they think they should just know.
Yes.
And normalizing, no, we all have to learn this. This is something that we all need to learn. It's really important.
Here and then here. We'll come back on that side.
Adding on to that, like also in terms of retrieving, so many times data cleanliness, but also like taxonomy of things and being able to just have, even if it's like uppercase letters or common spellings, and then finding those common, those common topologies that you can have for the data structure.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the times we start working with organization and that's like the fundamental thing, because everyone starts dumping everything in and then trying to do that retroactively, it takes sometimes years.
Literally years. Yes. One more.
I just been like nodding like crazily during the whole thing, but so if you, I teach a digital humanities course, and so I give students data sets, but one of the things I've realized is they often see data as just this, like, it is already an answer, right? So I think one of the things about this is it really sets up for students that data is something to be interpreted, right? And so this idea that data isn't just this clean set that answers something that it's already standing there, but to start to browse to say, like, what is my question? But also, what were the questions being asked when this data was being collected? And how do I maybe use that for a different question? So I think I'm really excited about this, because I think by handing my students pre-made sets, I've been sort of in some ways cramping their ideas about what data is.
That's so powerful. That is so powerful. Okay, we're going to move to the next question. I think I probably have 2 minutes. How can we position generalists? Well, the last two questions. Thoughts on the last two questions? Positioning generalist repositories or giving researchers the tools not just to write clean code, but to publish their work?
Because I'm a big fan of the FAIR principles, and I'm a big fan of how they basically, tell you why you should do things in a certain way to make sure your code and your data sets are reproducible and reusable, and the license is properly attached. And they're also agnostic of how you choose to do it, even though there are definitely guidelines and best practices out there. But I think if you understand the FAIR principles, a lot of the stuff can be accomplished.
Agreed. Do you all think that we're moving, that in academia or even in research, we're moving towards FAIR principles and all of the principles that we've been talking about being approved for things like tenure, promotion, and things like that? Do you think we'll ever see that in our lifetime? Oh no. Well, on that note, I think Please get in touch with us. I'm done. I have no, yeah, we're done. So thank you all so much.